Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. My name's Ivana Harinkyu if you're new here, and if you're not, thank you for coming back. Today is Wednesday, September the 28th, and today I am joined by our weather reporter, Lee Morgan, and today we're talking about Hurricane Ian. Now, I know this is something that you've probably all already been talking about this morning. You might have already gotten alerts on your phone. Just before Lee and I got started, I got an alert on my phone and my watch from a national outlet giving us updates on Hurricane Ian. So that's something we're all talking about today, Lee. I was hoping that today you could give us a little bit more of the specifics about when we are expected to see the storm hit Florida. I know you and I were talking right before we got live here, and it actually is hitting right now. It hasn't technically made landfall, and I'll let you get into that. But the storm is hitting. What is going to happen in Florida, what the timing is looking like, and also what people in Alabama and along our Gulf Coast can expect. So we've got a lot of maps here that you gave me from the National Weather Service. I know you just got an update from the National Weather Service. So let's talk about the latest. Right now, at last check, the hurricane was not quite a Category 5, but it's getting close. Is that right?
Yes, this morning it makes me sick. If we watch hurricanes, we're as weather weenies, weather people, we're always interested in them, but and you want to learn more about them, to improve the warnings and to improve buildings. And so when the next one hits, it's going to be better. But it just makes you sick when you see this happening, and it's just happening in slow motion. And what we have here is a top end Category 4 hurricane. So it has got maximum sustained winds at 155 miles an hour. Category 5 winds start at 157 miles an hour. So it is right there. And at this point, 2 mile an hour difference doesn't really matter. It is going to do catastrophic damage to the southwest part of the Florida Peninsula. So we're talking around Port Charlotte, Fort Myers, areas, Inglewood, Bonita Beach. You might have heard you might be familiar with some of those towns down there along the coast. They are in line to really get hit hard by the storm. So what is happening right now is 11 a.m. The eye wall of the storm is starting to push on shore. So that's one of those really strong, wall of wind and water is starting to move onto the coast. It's not landfall yet. Landfall comes when the center of the eye makes it onto land. So we're not there yet. We're probably an hour or two out from that. It's moving at about 10 miles an hour or so. So it's just beginning here, and it's going to be bad. The storm surge is one of the most immediate concerns, and it in parts of that coastline could be from 12 to 18 feet, and that's above ground level. So we're talking worst of the worst. It could be as high as like a 2-story building for frame of reference.
And I want to stop you really quickly. Yeah. We're going to talk about that storm surge, and you gave me a really helpful chart here that kind of puts in perspective what that surge could look like. But right now I've got the timing graph up. Now, I know you said that right now we're looking at a top Category 4 hurricane at 155 miles an hour as it hits Florida. Right. A Category 5 starts at 157 miles per hour, as you said. So that 2 mile an hour difference does not mean much to the average person. The average person living in Florida that is going to be hit by this. I don't think it matters to them whether this is a high 4 or a low 5. It is not a good storm. So it's hitting Florida right now. The Weather Service will not say that it's made landfall until a little bit later on today, but Florida is starting to see the effects. So I pulled up this graphic. You can kind of see in that red area that says 11 a.m. Wednesday at the bottom of Florida, kind of at the top of Cuba there. You can see that yellow highlighted region. That's kind of where we are now. So Lee, how fast is this storm moving? How long is that southern part of Florida going to be hit by these winds, by this water, and by this storm?
It's going to be several hours. So in that map, this is the official tracking map from the National Hurricane Center. The little orangey yellow area is the area of tropical storm force winds. So that's winds 39 miles an hour to about 74 miles an hour. And then the little red core is where your really serious hurricane winds are. So this storm is it's moving about 10 miles an hour or so. So it is going to push on shore slowly. Right there in that southwest part of the Florida Peninsula. And then it's going to cross over the peninsula and make it to the East Coast probably later this afternoon or tonight. And they went ahead this morning and issued a hurricane warning for part of that east coast of Florida because they're not thinking it's going to weaken. It's going to weaken some when it moves inland. It just will. But they're not thinking it will be near or at hurricane force when it comes off the east coast of Florida there. So areas, on that eastern coast that you see in that red area have been put under a hurricane warning as well. So it is just going to rake the entire peninsula of Florida because, a hurricane isn't just where the eye comes on shore. The effects of the wind and the rain and the storm surge extend way out from the center. So and then we've got the threat of tornadoes coming up, especially on the eastern side of the peninsula because the way the winds and everything rotate counterclockwise around the storm. So those storms could come up on the land and start to rotate. And they had lots of tornado warnings yesterday. So it's just a really bad day.
And Lee, that area where that yellow kind of highlighted region is, where that first red line there is at the bottom, is that the Tampa region, or what type of cities are right there where the storm is hitting right now?
Right. It's going to come in a little south of Tampa. Tampa's still going to get the effects of wind and storm surge and all that. It's not as dire. It's still going to be bad. It's not going to be as bad as we were thinking earlier this week when we thought it was going to come in more closer to Tampa, because Tampa's got a really shallow bay and storm surge could just be terrible there. Still going to get it, but not as bad as some places south. So really Tampa down to Naples, that area of the coast is what is really under the gun here for the next few hours as this storm pushes on shore.
And this is a similar map. It's not the tracking map that we were just talking about. This is a little bit more of a timing map. So it can tell people, especially those of our viewers here in Florida, it can give them a little bit of a look at what the timing looks like here. Now, I took the banner at the bottom of our screen away so that people could see that color coding there with the chance of receiving those high winds at 39 miles an hour and higher winds. So that purple area is the place where you're going to see, according to the Weather Service, 100% chance of those high winds. And that's pretty much the bulk of Florida, especially the bottom half of Florida there. So you can see a little bit here of that timing. And then I want to quickly jump into the storm surges we were talking about, Lee. We've heard this all morning, or probably for the last few days, that these storm surges could be one of the most dangerous parts of this storm. So This is a map that gives us a little bit more of an idea of how high those surges are expected to be. When you look at this map, what stands out to you? What are the highest storm surges expected?
We don't see forecasts for storm surge like this. This is really really high numbers, and the area in purple is the area of most concern. So that's where the National Hurricane Center is forecasting that storm surge heights, that's the height of the water above the dry ground, could go from 12 to 18 feet. So we're talking almost a 2-story building high. And that's just going to wipe out if that were to come to pass, and that's not going to be in that whole area. Some places we're going to get it worse than others. But that's just where they're thinking the best chances of the worst surge are going to be. So, and then on either side of that, you're going to still have really high surge levels, just not that incredibly high. And the Weather Service, the National Hurricane Center, they're really serious scientists. They don't throw around a lot of sensational words or anything like that. And they keep saying it's going to be catastrophic damage from storm surge. So I just can't emphasize enough. I just pray that most of the people in that area had the ability to get out if they were told to evacuate, because the water is the thing that kills the most people when it comes to tropical systems. You don't think about that. You think about the wind because it has the most, it's easier to see, and storm surge rolling in is not quite have the same effect, but it is deadly and it gets more people than you would expect. So let's just hope, these are their forecasts. Let's just hope that this doesn't come to pass, but it is not looking promising so far this morning. They've got a recon plane, I believe, flying into this storm right now to sample it and see if the winds have increased anymore, because lightning is there. They're seeing a lot of lightning around the eye, and that sometimes indicates that the storm is strengthening. And the recon planes have had a rough time this morning, some of the roughest weather they've been in, and they've been in a lot of hurricanes, right? All of them. And the turbulence and everything in this one has just been incredible. It said the plane dropped like 1,000 feet in a few seconds because of this turbulence, and it's kind of shook up those guys. And they've seen it all, right? So we're talking about a powerful, powerful storm here, and it's just sickening. I just hate to see it.
Well, and we've got a lot of comments too from people. One person says that they're moving to Tampa in just a few weeks. One person says that their mom lives right at the Suwannee River. I hope I'm saying that correctly there, and I'm not sure exactly where that is, but I'm hoping that it is not anywhere close to these storm surges, or that that your mom has been able to evacuate or is in a safe place. Now, if you are like me and you look at some of these storm surges, it looks very scary, but you might not have a frame of reference for how tall that actually is. I know how tall I am, and that's about my only frame of reference there. So there's a chart here that I thought was so interesting. I'm going to pull again this banner of ours down so people can see it. And this is from the National Weather Service. And this gives you an idea of how tall those storm surges are. So it has, as you can see, children to adults, the children in that blue area between 0 and 3 feet. And then it goes up and it gives you an area for each of the footage of these storm surges. The top of that, greater than 9 feet, that gives you a little bit of a scale for an average adult person, how much taller that storm surge could be. And that chart, to me, Lee, really put this in perspective and really said, wow, this is a wall of water that is that tall coming in. And that is terrifying to look at.
Yeah. And it comes in fast too. I've been watching video along the coast this morning, and they have webcams all over the place. And just to see it come in, it comes in fast. And I even saw some guys, don't do this, don't ever do this, near Fort Myers on the pier in the water. And it was just throwing them around like they were rag dolls, y'all. I don't know why anybody would do that, but anyway, it just demonstrates the power of water. It only takes 6 inches or so to knock you down a fast moving water. So when you're thinking of 9, 12, 18 feet of surge coming in on top of all those high winds, I mean, it's indescribable, really.
Please don't do that. As you said, Lee, there's no reason that people should be doing that. And there's no safe way to do it. I want to pull back up this timing chart because we got some people asking about the outer bands of that hurricane and where we can expect to see rain or other effects. So we can see in this timing chart the path of the hurricane, the timing there. But we see Alabama, Tennessee getting just a tiny bit of that green, that small chance there of those high winds. But what else can Alabama expect from this hurricane?
Well, it's going to be windy here across Alabama today and tomorrow, and it's in part from the hurricane, and it's in part it's a pressure gradient. It's a difference of pressure between the hurricane, which is got really low pressure, and there's an area of high pressure to the west of us. So where those two systems kind of butt up against each other, it churns up the wind. So we're going to have a lot of wind today. It's going to be gusty at times, like 10 to 20 miles an hour. Some places could get gusts up to 40 miles an hour. And this is statewide they're looking at. So part of that is from that big counterclockwise circulation around Ian. It's going to be pulling those winds down from the north. Now, for Alabama's weather, that means it's going to be really nice. It's going to be sunny for most places until some of those outer fringes of clouds might impact some parts of eastern Alabama. But none of the rough weather, none of the, hurricane or even tropical storm force winds we have to worry about. But what it is also going to pull down is the air is going to be really dry. Really low humidity values for here in Alabama. We are not used to this, like 20%, 15% humidity. After this summer, we don't even know what to do with those kind of, humidity levels. And the combination of the really, the breezy winds and the low humidity can make it really easy for fires to get going and then spread really quickly. So most of the state today is under what they call a red flag warning. And that just means that conditions are really primed for wildfires. So don't do any outdoor burning today. Don't throw your cigarettes out the window, try, because anything that does catch fire can spread really quickly in these kind of conditions. Now we're going to be watching Ian as it moves inland, and then it'll come back out over the Atlantic, maybe briefly. And then we could see it make another landfall, Georgia, South Carolina, somewhere along the coast, a lot weaker, we think. Could be a hurricane, but it may not be. we could get a little rain on the fringes of that system sometime, Friday, maybe Saturday, but the chances are low. So, and that would be mainly East Alabama. West Alabama is not going to see any rain from this at all, unless it takes a crazy path shift, which they're not thinking it's going to at this point. So, we could see some low rain chances on the eastern side of the state, and we're going to see breezy, gusty winds along the coast. The Alabama coast, you got to be on alert for rip currents. There's a high rip current risk through Thursday. Those are deadly for people. Those have killed more along the Gulf Coast than any other kind of weather hazard. So don't take those for granted. The weather's going to be great, but the sea's going to be rough. So they're encouraging everybody to stay out of the Gulf today, even though the skies might be sunny and the temperature's great, but it is not a good day to go swimming there. So that's what we're going to be watching for Alabama, just the really breezy winds. I think there's a wind advisory for parts of Southwest Alabama. A risk of rip currents, and we'll be watching just to see if any of those fringes of the rain make it into the eastern part of the state in the next few days, but it's looking less likely. So we don't really have anything to worry about as far as bad weather from Ian.
That is, again, good for Alabama, but that doesn't take away, I think, the worry that we have for our neighbors here in Florida, and also the people, especially in that South Florida region, who are looking like they will get pretty hard by this storm. Again, currently a very high Category 4, nearly a Category 5 as it hit Florida just before we came on air here, and again, expected to make landfall later on today. Lee, I know you're going to be keeping us updated on AL.com/weather with all of this information, with the latest on Ian. So I know you've got a long day ahead of you. And again, we're thinking of all of our friends, our family, our neighbors in Florida, and hope that everybody stays safe. So Lee, thank you for your updates. We'll continue to look for them. Everybody watching, thank you. Stay safe, and we will see you tomorrow.